Hello, Andy from Barrington Motor Works here. This video is going to be about how we typically do our initial setup for the Magnetos on the /2 models. This one actually happens to be a /3, so R51/3, but the setup for the Magneto ignition system is roughly the same. So to go over just the quick components we've been rebuilding for this, we've got our rebuilt mag body, so new coil, new condenser, new points. The pieces have been taken apart, cleaned, re-put back together. We do have a new felt on there as well. The old style or original style advancer unit has been disassembled, cleaned using a vapor rust and some brushing, and reassembled, lubricating all the pivot points, new springs and so forth. And then our remagnetized Magneto rotor. So some folks have asked, does this make a noticeable difference in terms of its runnability? Yes. Is it something that you can typically diagnose? It's kind of tough. Typically you're going to see more issues with your condenser, your coil, or your points, or even your advancer before you really start to see a runnability difference with a remagnetized rotor, though just as part of our typical service of it, we like to take in the old core and replace it with one that has been remagnetized, so it's got a fresh charge to it. So typically what I'll do is I'll start with the mag rotor, just getting that in place, and then go from there. So if you see, I marked it with red at the 2 hash marks. They're 180 degrees out. It doesn't matter which one you start with. They both are roughly about the same because of the pistons being at top dead center twice during the 4 vents. So what we'll typically do is start with our flywheel and crank position at top dead center at the S mark. There we go. And there are multiple versions for the /3 that you'll find the flywheel is a little different. There's our F mark, has a pressed in ball. Your S mark on this model flywheel also is a pressed in ball, but your OT is not. So we're trying to get that as close to that hash mark in the window as we can. Okay. There's the S mark. So that's telling me that it is coming up on the compression stroke on one of these cylinders. So that means everything is as far forward as we can get it. So this is correct timing position. So now what we'll do is install our Magneto rotor. And you want to try and get this as close to the hash marks being straight up and down, level with the case, say 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, as close as you can to that. It will be adjusted as we go on. I do it loosely for now, just so I do have the ability to rotate it after I install the mag body. And typically throughout the course of this, I'll be double checking to make sure that my flywheel hasn't moved, because sometimes the crank does have the tendency to want to shift around as you start to do things. So we'll call that vertical. So the next thing that I'll do is install the mag body. I've also put red marks on the V that sits on the brass plate on the front. That tells me where I want the hash marks of my mag rotor to line up with my mag body. Okay, so when you're installing your mag body, typically you don't ever really want to readjust this. You want to kind of set it and forget it type of deal. So what I'm looking for when I do these is the posts that it mounts to has a little bit of movement to it, the channel there. I try and center that post in the mag body as close as I can. I want it to be as close to center as I can make it. So then the next thing that I'll do, and typically what we like to do is a kind of an indicator to people, hey, you know, you don't want to move your mag body. It's not something that you need to use to adjust your timing. That can either be done with your points, your rotor at this point, or your advance plate. Those are all other ways of changing your ignition timing. So one way that we do that is that we'll install oversized washers and nylock nuts. So for us, that's kind of a, hey, that's a uncommon nut. So that is kind of indication, don't touch it, don't move it. So we'll tighten these down. Now our mag body is located. So really the only thing that we're going to be moving now is going to be our mag rotor. So again, I'll double check and make sure that my S mark is still centered in the window. Good. And now what I'm looking for here is I want to try and get the hash mark of the mag rotor to line up with the hash mark of the mag body. You can see it's slightly off there, so I'm just going to move it a little bit, and I'm going to move it with the advancer itself. I find the divot in the nose of the mag rotor, and I find the corresponding pin that it's going to go on, and because there is a bit of space, because of or it takes up space, the new points do. What I'll typically do is lift them just to kind of get enough clearance to be able to move the mag, or excuse me, the advancer onto the end of the thing. And you want to be careful that you don't, you're actually keyed in there. You don't want to go crazy and tighten up on it, and that could damage the end of the rotor. Those are tough to get fixed. Okay, so now I'm going to rotate the mag body, or excuse me, the mag rotor. Try and get that hash mark as close to lined up with that V as I can. So helps to really look at it dead on. So that looks pretty dead on to me. At least dead on enough that if there's any variation to it, you can take it up with adjusting the points gap or adjusting the advance plate. So again, double checking to make sure the flywheel is still in place. Good. So now just to get the rotor to stay where I want it, what I'm going to do is tighten everything down, and that will seat the magneto rotor onto the end of the cam. And this is the boring part of the video where you get to watch some guy thread a bolt in for 30 seconds. So what's going to happen is that rotor is going to want to turn on the cam. So if you have a bolt or if you put a bolt in the nose of the crank, excuse me, and have something to kind of push against, it helps keep everything in place when you're tightening it down. And when you're turning these motors over after you're past this point, it's usually where you want to turn it over with. You don't want to ever turn it over using the cam, because it can move things around or damage the bolt or damage the cam. You could end up with some differential timing, anything like that. So now what I'll typically do is just go through one rotation, see what it does. So go back to my S mark. F. There's my S. And what I'm looking for is that hash mark to line up again, which it has. So now our Magneto rotor, Magneto body, Magneto ignition system is timed to the crank so that it is in the correct position for firing when you're idling. So remember, S mark, not OT, not F, S mark, and follow your hash mark. So to hopefully be able to do a video on static timing shortly, and then once we get this motor in, we will then be able to do a video on dynamic timing. But that's your basic setup. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them. Subscribe to our page, to our channel, and like us on Facebook and Instagram. Again, this is Andy from Barrington Motor Works. Thanks a lot.